Welcome to the Judiciary Committee. My name is Justin Wayne, Justinwayne, and I represent Legislative District 13, which is North Omaha and Northeast Douglas County. I serve as the chair of Judiciary Committee. We will start off today by having committee members and staff do self-introduction, starting with my right, Senator Ibach. Not there. Senator McKinney.
Good afternoon, Senator Terrell McKinney, District 11, North Omaha.
Good afternoon, Suzanne Geis, District 25, which is the southeast corner of Lincoln and Lancaster County.
Angelina Pierre, Lewis Committee Court.
Hi, my name is Wendy DeBoer. I represent District 10, which is in northwest Omaha.
Rick Holcroft, District 36, West and South Sarpy County.
Also be assisting us at our committee pages, Logan Bartek from Norfolk, who's a political science and criminology major at UNL, and Isabel Cole, who is from Omaha, who is a political science and pre-law major. This afternoon, we will be hearing 5 bills, and they'll be taken up in the order that was listed outside the room. On the table in the back, you will find blue testifier sheets. If you are planning on testifying today, please fill out the blue testifier sheet, hand it to the page when you come up to testify. That make sure we have accurate records. Also note that it's a legislative policy that all letters for the record must be submitted or must be received by the committee by noon the day prior before. Any handouts, please make sure you have 10. If you don't have 10, hand it to the page ahead of time so we can have 10 copies to make sure everybody has them. Testimony for each bill will begin with the introducer's opening statement, followed by supporters of the bill, then those in opposition, followed by neutral capacity. Then the introducer will have the ability to take a closing statement if they wish to. We ask you to begin your testimony by giving us your first and last name, spell them for the record. We will be using the 3-minute light system today. When you begin your testimony, the light on the table will turn green. It will be yellow when there is a 1-minute mark, and then it'll be red. We ask you to wrap up your final thoughts. I would like to remind everyone, including senators, to please turn off your cell phones, put them on vibrate, and we will begin today's hearing with LB 253. Welcome, Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Chairman Wayne. Senator Brewer sends his regrets. He's introducing a bill on another committee right now. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name's Tony Baker. That's spelled Tonybaker, and I am Senator Brewer's legislative aide. Out of deference to the 4 senators who got bills behind me, I'm going to try to get through this really quick and give as much time to the committee as I can. I'm here to introduce LB 253. Senator Brewer is introducing this bill on behalf of the law enforcement agencies of Western Nebraska that are often small, poor departments that have just 1 or 2 people in them. The problem this bill solves is a problem unique to rural law enforcement agencies in Nebraska. When a new officer is hired, they need to be scheduled for training at Nebraska's Law Enforcement Academy in Grand Island so they can be trained and credentialed to be a fully qualified sworn law enforcement officer. While these small, poorly funded agencies wait for this officer to complete their training, the officer cannot be used for most law enforcement functions. These small departments absorb the cost of the new officer's salary while they wait for a class date in the academy. Oftentimes, the larger departments in eastern Nebraska have taken all the seats in the next class, and the smaller department is forced to wait. I've talked to sheriffs out in our 11 counties, and I've heard wait times go from 4 to 7 months. These wait times can be several months. I think this is excessive, and it places a heavy burden on a small town police force or a sparsely populated county sheriff's office to carry an employee on the payroll that is almost a liability until they are trained. I think we can do better. The bill says Scotts Bluff because we needed to put a town in the bill to do a fiscal note for. And so Senator Brewer is open to whatever town you want to think about. For example, one of the ideas could be we do the classroom training at the Shadron State College campus. Then we load up the students, take them to Grand Island for a couple of weeks, and they do the driving and firearms training piece of the curriculum. And then they can all come together and graduate at Grand Island too. But there's no reason to have them down there for that if we can find a place to do it in Western Nebraska. We don't want a completely separate brick and mortar facility. We think existing facilities are usable for this purpose. We basically need a classroom environment and a place to conduct that kind of program of instruction. This will help reduce the per diem costs and the mileage costs that the small departments have to pay. And I think a second law enforcement academy located in western Nebraska would solve that problem. Our small rural law enforcement agencies can't afford lobbyists. Their senator is all they have to advocate for them. After considering all the testimony, I look forward to working with the committee to craft the language we need to move this bill forward, is what Tom wanted to say. Subject to your questions, that concludes my opening statement. Senator Brewer instructed me to tell the chair that with your permission, I can take questions, but I will not close. Thank you.
Thank you. We won't have any, I only got one question. What committee did Senator Brewer pick over ours to go over?
Oh, it's the first freedom bill in it, and right now I'm drawing a blank. And I shouldn't have drawn a blank because I wrote the speech for that too.
We're gonna find out and hold that against him. Thank you for being here. First proponent.
Chairman Wayne and members of the Judiciary Committee, for the record, my name is Elaine Menzel. That's ELAINE-MENZEL. Here today on behalf of the Nebraska Association of County Officials in support of LB 253. We are in support of this legislation for many of the same reasons, well, for the reasons that Mr. Baker testified to. And while it would support the smaller populated counties, it would also assist those that are larger populated and waiting to get into the training facility. As he testified, there are longer waiting periods for all individuals due to the demand to get into their training facilities. And you had heard some of this, those of you who were on the committee last year had heard some of these ideas about Western Nebraska presence for purposes of training, and perhaps now is the time that it would be able to be enacted. With that said, if you have any questions, I'll attempt to answer them.
Any questions from the committee? Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. And I'm sorry, but you're the first up, so you're the one that gets the questions. But I think you'll know some of these answers, so.
I hope so.
So, because I know that I had a public hearing in reference to this, that we brought to light, the one in Grand Island being understaffed, not funded, and it wasn't, and money taken out of their budget in Grand Island by our governor. And then it wasn't until we got federal funds that we actually funded it and got it up to speed. So my question is, because I want to put that scenario out, that we've known for a long time, public hearings that I brought forward and others, that Grand Island was severely underfunded, understaffed, and it wasn't until we could get federal funds that we could staff it and upgrade it. Why do we believe that the state will keep their promise if we have a second location? Because it seems that we were very ineffective at funding the Grand Island Training Center. And we created those waiting lists they're talking about because we didn't staff and because we didn't upgrade. So what assures us that we're going to be able to keep the second location open?
Hope.
Hope? I'll take that. All right.
I guess from experience or past history, there are times when the county is reluctant to rely on what the state will support us with.
Sure.
Based on
Because they
things
screw
that
you
have
over
occurred.
constantly.
Or because the lack of funding or other issues arise or priorities and those types of things. So
how
guess
would the counties feel if the state says, we're not going to pay for this anymore, and they create another unfunded mandate for the counties? Would NACO then come in against that?
we would probably be opposed to an unfunded mandate. I think I can say that.
So so have you been in on any of these conversations? Because I'm going to have to wait for somebody else for the next question.
I'm aware to a minimal degree, but with
Okay,
respect
so-
to being able to,
Was it considered to do like what Sarpy County did? So we got sick of waiting for Grand Island to finally be funded by our governor. And so we put together our own training academy with all the communities in Sarpy. I know it's a little different out west because you don't have that benefit in municipalities and counties are further apart. But have they talked about sharing resources and doing their own academy?
Not to my knowledge, but it could certainly be, it could be done in terms of an interlocal agreement or something of that nature. But with respect to having the resources to do so in terms of money, I don't know that that's something they immediately think of or attempt
that's
to at this
fair.
point. So,
All right, thank you so much.
thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing
Thank-
none, thank you for being here.
Thank
Next
you.
proponent, next proponent. Any opponents? Opponents? Those testifying in neutral capacity, Seeing none, we have seven letters, 3 in support, 3 in opposition, 1 in neutral. And that'll close, or does you waive closing on behalf of? Mr. Baker waives closing on behalf of Senator Brewer. That'll close the hearing on LB 235 and open the hearing on, we pushed yours to the end. You called and said you, open the hearing on LB 417.
Thank you, Chairperson Wade, for not pushing me to the end, and members of the Judiciary Committee. Thank you. I'm introducing LB 417. I'm sorry, my name is Mike McDonnell, McDonnell. I represent Legislative District 5, South Omaha. I'm introducing LB 417, which would require the Nebraska Commission on Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice to coordinate with the University of Nebraska to establish a leadership academy for law enforcement professionals. This is a bill that the Nebraska Fraternal Order of Police have worked on and suggested to the Nebraska Crime Commission. Today, Nebraska law enforcement is forced to seek management and leadership education outside of the state. This does not create a problem for our larger agencies, as they can absorb an officer being absent during a 3-month academy in Virginia, or they are able to allow these officers to take an online course. For our smaller agencies, this is a cost prohibitive, and or these smaller agencies do not have the necessary staffing to cover these officers leaving the state and not being on patrol. LB 417 would allow a localized leadership academy here in Nebraska that will be cost effective and accessible. The goal is to continue to professionalize our law enforcement personnel across the state. LB 417 would take another step towards accomplishing this and professionalizing our law enforcement officers. It is my understanding that the Crime Commission is supportive of this proposal, and the University of Nebraska is willing to house this program. Matt Burrell, Vice President of the Nebraska Fraternal Order of Police, is here to further elaborate on this proposal. I was happy to introduce for the Fraternal Order of Police the idea of them reaching out to want to get more education to help them improve their job performance. I think it's telling in a very great way. They're committed to their profession and any kind of education that we can give them in leadership. And in the handouts I gave you, there's kind of an example of some of the classes that could be developed. And you look at the times these people are leaving our state, going to Virginia, which possibly is not, there's not a cost for the education, but there is a cost for the room and board, the travel, and of course the time away. And there is definitely, if you're going to go to Northwestern, there's a cost of average of $7,500 for these leadership classes. So we're proposing it because we think it can definitely help their job performance, but at the same time, I think it's going to be more cost effective to keep our people here, and we have the people that can train them in leadership and help improve their job performance. Here to answer your questions.
Any questions from the committee? Senator McKinney.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Thank you, Senator McDonnell. You mentioned professionalizing the police law enforcement in a state. I'm just curious, would they be open to requiring every officer to go through a leadership academy to gain extra knowledge on policing and professionalism and leadership?
I would be, yes, I'd be, and I would assume that they want all of their police officers to be able to go through, this kind of training eventually. It's, the idea of how big is this academy going to be, how many people can go through at a time. I think logistics we'd have to discuss, but no, I'm definitely open to every police officer.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Will you stay around for closing?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
First proponent. Welcome back to your Judiciary Committee.
Thank you, Chairman Wayne, Senators. My name is Matt Barral, Mattbarrall, and I am the Vice President for the Nebraska State Fraternal Order Police. This idea is a continuing effort from LB 51 to increase education for law enforcement. This portion covers command officers, generally considered to be lieutenants and captains, those who are making real decisions for their agencies in terms of how they are going to provide law enforcement to the cities and counties for the state of Nebraska. Right now, those continuing education programs are centered primarily the FBI National Academy in Virginia and Northwestern University. Those are considered the two preeminent educational agencies to do so. Those take quite a bit of time, 3 months or more. And from what we have received in terms of smaller, mostly Western Nebraska agencies, is that they cannot commit the time sink that it takes to send their people there. The FBI National Academy does pay for almost all of that education. Northwestern, like Senator McDonnell said, does run approximately $7,500, which can be cost prohibitive for many small agencies, especially when you only have 3 law enforcement officers there for the entire agency. This would allow Nebraska to lead the way for their small agencies in developing a command program with the University of Nebraska. We reached out, University of Nebraska at Omaha has a leadership program in which they deal with businesses and other professions. They are looking to do something for government and law enforcement. So we are hoping to be able to partner with them. They are very excited about this and they are willing to go and develop that program. My time is almost up, but I can answer as many questions as I can.
Any questions from the committee, Senator Ivo?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, thank you for testifying. Is this something that could be done online? Could there a portion of it or all of it? You referred to the Western Nebraska folks as, being struggling to participate. Is it something that could be done online?
Partially, yes. That is part of the program that they're envisioning where they would have online interaction and then once a week, once a month, something of that nature, they would come to the University of Omaha, participate in a group setting because a lot of that interaction does need to happen in a group setting from what I've been told. But yes, there would be a large component of that would be online.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here again. Next proponent. Any other proponent? Any opponents? Anybody here to testify in opposition? Anybody testifying in the neutral capacity? In the neutral capacity. For the record, we received 5 letters, 4 in support and 1 in opposition. There goes consent calendar. With that, Senator McDonnell.
Unless there's questions, I'll wait.
Any questions? Seeing none, Senator McDonnell waves, and that concludes the hearing on LB 417. And we will open on LB 382. Welcome.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wayne and members of the Judiciary Committee. Senator Bostar wishes he could be here, but is introducing a bill on another committee. My name is Nathan Janulewicz. That's Nathan Janulewicz. I'm the legislative aide for Senator Elliott Bostar. I'm here today to present LB 382, a bill that would recognize in statute the University of Nebraska Police Departments across their system's 4 campuses. The introduced version of LB 382 may appear to be a sizable bill. The bulk of the new language simply adds the University of Nebraska to existing statutes that define state-recognized law enforcement agencies. In Section 34, LB 382 creates a new statutory section defining the scope of the University of Nebraska Police Departments and officers' power, jurisdiction, and university oversight. I highlight this particular section because it contains 2 of the most important aspects of the bill. First, it allows formal interlocal cooperative agreements between the university and law enforcement agencies to assist on municipal and county purposes. Second, it requires the University of Nebraska Police Departments to establish and maintain a police oversight committee that is comprised of campus constituencies, including students. Another key purpose behind the genesis of LB 382 is the professionalization of the University of Nebraska Police Departments and officers. While the university police chiefs will testify behind me to share more on-the-ground feedback and insights, currently no university police officers qualify for state death benefits for those who die in the line of duty, nor do they qualify for the workers' compensation for any mental health impairment suffered in execution of their public service. With this legislature's past work to recognize the professionalism we demand from law enforcement officers through the passage of the In the Line of Duty Act and the mental workers' compensation legislation, it is only fitting that these university police officers who work side by side with other law enforcement officers receive the same treatment in times of sacrifice and anguish. Like similar proposals in the past that involved the University of Nebraska Police Departments, the university would be required to comply with all existing state reporting and training requirements for law enforcement agencies. And as I have mentioned earlier, the university would also be held to a higher standard of oversight through the requirement of Police Oversight Committee. Lastly, in light of the University of Nebraska wanting their police departments to be recognized and treated as state law enforcement agencies, we have also had a community college approach us and raise similar concerns as the university. The amendment that was distributed would include all public universities and colleges to the section in the green copy of LB 382. A representative from Metropolitan Community College will be testifying to highlight the need for some community colleges to have their police departments recognized by state statute in light of interlocal agreements and workforce recruitment challenges. With that, I believe that LB 382 and the accompanying amendment help address key workforce challenges facing the University of Nebraska system and our community colleges. And I would ask the committee to look favorably on the extensive work done over the years to find compromise in this space. I thank the chair and the committee.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. We'll be here. You'll be here for close. Any first up, proponents. Proponents. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Wayne and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Hassan Ramza, HASSAN RAMZAH, and I have the honor to serve as the Assistant Vice Chancellor and Chief of Police for the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Police Department. I'm appearing today in an official capacity in support of LB 382 on behalf of the University of Nebraska system, and I want to especially thank Lincoln State Senator Elliott Bostar for introducing this needed legislation. LB 382 will allow University of Nebraska police officers to work as law enforcement officers outside of their primary jurisdiction and provide public safety services on other University of Nebraska campuses. As Chief of Police for the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, this proposed legislation comes at a crucial time. Currently, law enforcement agencies across the country are experiencing challenges in attracting and finding applicants qualified for the position of police officer. Like law enforcement agencies across the state of Nebraska, the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Police Department is experiencing challenges finding police officers to fill existing vacancies. Under current law, University of Nebraska police officers are not defined as police officers like our law enforcement counterparts in state, county, city, and village police departments. As a result, University of Nebraska police departments and police officers are impacted in ways that can be counterproductive to providing the desired level of public safety services in a higher education environment. For example, although police officers are hired by the University of Nebraska meet the requirements for the Nebraska Law Enforcement Training Center Academy upon completing the 15-week basic course and receiving a law enforcement commission, they are currently required to apply and be granted a special deputy state sheriff commission before being allowed to discharge their duties as a law enforcement officer. The approval process for a special deputy state sheriff commission can take several weeks, often resulting in delays in starting field training for new officers, ultimately impacting assignment of officers needed to fill existing vacancies. Nothing in LB 382 would change the current practice of University of Nebraska police departments to adhere to the following training and statutory requirements established by the Nebraska Commission on Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice. University of Nebraska Lincoln Police Department coordinates safety and security for the largest venue in Nebraska, historic Memorial Stadium, providing a level of safety service required to coordinate and assist our state and local partners and first responders. With the passage of LB 382, you will remove the necessity for the University of Nebraska Lincoln police officers and university officers in the state of Nebraska to obtain special deputy state commissions and grant the same rights and responsibilities afforded law enforcement officers in the state of Nebraska. The proposed statute will support University of Nebraska community policing efforts by establishing legitimacy toward developing collaborative relationships with stakeholders. The enactment of LB 382 will provide additional opportunities for coordinating public safety resources among the University of Nebraska campuses and assist efforts to identify our departments as destinations for those seeking career opportunities in law enforcement and public safety.
All right.
Thank you for your time today, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Senator McKinney.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Senator.
What would you say to individuals that feel like the university is trying to create a statewide police force and they're hesitant about that?
I would thank you for that question, Senator. I would say that university police officers in the state of Nebraska are defined within their jurisdictions. The purpose is to serve those particular campus communities. The officers will also support other campuses around campus within their jurisdictions and not represent or provide law enforcement services across the state that already have jurisdictions.
Can you clarify around campus? Are you saying they'll be policing only on campus, or would they be policing, say, for example, if I'm at UNO and there's Inwood Park or a neighborhood around there, would they be policing those areas too?
You know, they will police their campuses specifically. Those are their jurisdictions. If there is request for assistance or and particularly at UNL, we have officers that transfers between city campus and East Campus. If they see something or they're summoned by a citizen or requested by another agency, they will intercede and assist in that particular instance.
So it's possible that they could be policing areas off of campus.
Only providing assistance. More so if working on outside of their jurisdiction, a lot of times those instances are where they're supporting the community, outreach, engagement, those types of activities, not enforcement based, because primarily our jurisdictions are our college campuses.
Okay. How diverse is the university police force?
I don't have the specific breakdown for you today, Senator, but I can get that information for you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Blood.
Thank you, Chair Wayne. Thank you for testifying today. I just have a quick question. So I looked at the fiscal note, of which there really was no fiscal note. And you're telling me that you feel that because there's been a workforce shortage, this is one way that maybe you can better address it. So the question that I have is, does this come with a pay increase then? You're kind of amending their titles? Because it seems that pay seems to be the number one reason people aren't coming to jobs. So will there be an increase in pay for these individuals or just increase in title
This is
and
just,
abilities?
thank you, Senator, that this is just changing their classification, or they're putting on the same status as a police officer, any police officer that's certified in the state of Nebraska and that receives a commission through the state of Nebraska. Does not impact their pay or change their pay scale. We would still serve under the same classifications that we have within our institutions.
So I'm curious, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea or anything, like I think it's a great idea. But what criteria, what research that brought you to this point? Were there other states that had done it? And it's like, oh, this has been very successful in helping us recruit more people for security. Or is it just kind of get your brains together here in Nebraska and decided we thought this was a joint good idea? Was there any data behind this decision?
Oh, thank you for the question, Senator. That's a great question. So there's a number of different layers to some of the challenges this creates. Most states around the country have a similar process that's been introduced as part of 382. So for example, I came from the state of Kansas. University police officers do not have to seek a separate commission to be able to do their duties. And they still work within their own jurisdictions. They still have the same responsibilities. We never had, in the city I came from, we didn't have university police officers coming into the city and, working, enforcement activities or investigating crimes and those types of activities. And so we're looking for a similar model here because of the need to legitimize policing for our officers, also to try to better serve and establish those relationships with our campus community. It also allows us some flexibility to be able to better serve public safety needs, whether it's adjusting the need for officers from one campus to serve in another campus. We talk about our resources needed for Memorial Stadium on football game days, for example. So it allows us a lot of flexibility to be able to perform public safety, which is, again, a very much a priority on our campuses.
Fair enough, thank you.
Senator DeBoer.
Thank you. So you kind of got to some of this with Senator Blood, but what's the sort of driving force that is, because I remember this bill 5 years ago. What's the driving force that has required you to make this change?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Right now, as I mentioned in my previous testimony, is that we are experiencing challenges and shortages with law enforcement officers. And 5 years ago, that wasn't the case. Today, that is the case. And I'll just use an example is that right now I have an officer on my department that is certified, Nebraska State certified. We just hired him on the department. He came from another agency. Right now, he's sitting at a desk when I actually need him on the campus providing public safety service, but he can't because he's waiting for that special deputy state commission, which usually again takes several weeks to be able to obtain that. And so when you're
Why is that? Why does it take several weeks?
it has to go through. We apply through the Nebraska State Patrol. It has to go through those administrative steps. And then it has to go to the governor's office for signature, and then return to our department.
So if we made that process more efficient and we say could do it in 2 or 3 days, would that alleviate the need for the bill?
No, ma'am, because there are other instances where, again, we need public safety assistance from other campuses. We look at, again, legitimacy of our campus police officers and be able to have the same recognition as their counterparts that they work side by side with every day almost.
Can you explain that legitimacy piece to me? Because, I'm a state senator and I'm not sure I would think that a campus officer was less legitimate and I've heard this bill before, and I don't think I would think that a campus officer was less legitimate than another officer. So how does that legitimacy piece play out when I don't think the public recognizes that there's some delegitimacy of campus police?
So I work on a college campus, and we serve largely a student population. A lot of times, students, when they come to a college campus, they actually it's their first opportunity to be away from, authority figures, so to speak. And so they have this newfound independence. And so in viewing campus police officers, a lot of times students don't see campus police officers as police officers. They see them more as a security guard or somebody that, that is, less authority or has less responsibilities.
But I'm not sure this kind of legal change is something that all the college kids are keeping up on. I'm not sure that's going to change their ability to see things one way or, I don't think that's a way that we affect their perspective on that.
It impacts reporting. It impacts the trust that police officers, campus police officers can develop with students, particularly students, but faculty, staff as well. So we want an environment where.
Why does it impact the trust?
Because of the legitimacy issue and not having that, students don't see campus police officers as that authority figure where, like I said, if you want to report a crime.
But how does this change that? I don't think the perception of students is going to be changed by this bill. Are you contending that this bill will change how students perceive campus police?
I believe so. And I also see the other side of that for the campus police officers themselves and how we see ourselves in terms of that legitimacy and being able to better serve our communities. We ascribe to a community policing philosophy where we support and build those relationships with our campus community. And so in order to be able to provide those similar services that are provided in a municipal community, a town, we want to be able to offer that same level of service, develop that same level of trust, particularly in today's age of policing, because there's just a number of layers that we as campus law enforcement officers want to be able to address. We want to stay up with national trends. We want to be able to address issues and be knowledgeable of how to de-escalate, how to deal with use of force issues. Those are critical areas that we as police officers want to be able to address and need to be able to address on our campuses. And that layer of being, having that equality is important to that.
So those kinds of maybe trainings you're talking about wanting, is that unavailable to you right now?
Actually, we go through these processes because it's best practice. We provide training for officers. Some things are required and then other things are not, but we want to be on the cutting edge. We recognize that policing has a great responsibility, and particularly in a higher education environment, because again, it is a student population.
So I'm just trying to understand here the position. Are you saying that you can't get the training, or you can to be cutting edge, or you can get the training to be cutting edge? Where does the wanting to be cutting edge fit in with what you're trying to do here?
It provides us in terms of the state of Nebraska itself, and in terms of that definition, there are certain aspects of our responsibilities that we perform on a daily basis. There's certain benefits and certain processes that we may not be able to engage in as part of our responsibilities, just simply by the way we're defined in the statute. And so that itself provides some limitations, or can provide some limitations for us. And so,
is it more? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is it more than about how you perceive yourselves rather than how other people perceive you? Is this about you feel the officers themselves feel delegitimized, and that's why you'd like to be baptized, so to speak, by the process? Or is there, or is there some, I mean, because if you can get the training now, if you, like, I guess I'm missing, what is it that you want to be able to do by this change that you can't do now? Other than feel maybe a sense of legitimacy?
The primary reason for us right now is, again, just staying up with recruitment and retention and competing with other law enforcement agencies. And again, we're not primarily a destination for, or viewed as a destination for applicants that want to get into law enforcement. And so if there's an applicant that has a choice in going to the municipal department or another department in a surrounding town, that becomes a lot more attractive
Is
in
that
terms of.
Is that because of pay, or is it because of just this legitimacy issue?
The legitimacy issue, it can be the pay, it can be a number of different issues. But this in itself, in terms of legitimacy, it's how we're defined, and again, what resources are available to us as a police department. And again, we're competing with other agencies for applicants, resources, benefits, those things.
Have you found that your ability to recruit has been less than, say, the other agencies around the area? So you've had
Yes.
more, so everyone's having trouble, but you're having more trouble.
Yeah, yes, we do. We have more difficulty simply because of how we're situated. And again, we're not viewed as a first option or even a known in terms of being recognized as a police department. Again, because a lot of times, whether it's students or others approach and view us as security guards.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator DeKay.
Real quick, I don't know if you can answer this. Can you tell me how many officers that you have on campus and what the turnover rate within those campus police officers are?
Yes, Senator. Specifically for my campus at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, I'm authorized right now 31 police officers. Right now on staff, we have 26, and we're having difficulty filling those 5 open positions. And so we usually hover over the past couple of years. We've hovered around close to almost a 20% loss in personnel.
Any other questions from the committee? Senator McKinney.
Thank you. What's your level of immunity currently for university police? If, like, say for example, a university police officer does some type of misconduct and somebody sues, do you have any immunity?
I think I understand the question correctly. If you're asking if a university police officer is liable for his or her conduct.
I'm asking whether you have pretty much qualified immunity currently. Yes or no? And I ask this because if this passes, would that change?
I don't know the answer to that specifically, Senator. Right now, there's some, I can't say that based on how we're defined right now, that is very difficult to answer because we're not defined as police officers. We're sort of in a gray area.
So currently, if somebody gets injured by a university police officer and somebody wants to sue, who is liable?
I would leave that to someone from our general counsel to be able to answer that specific question.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So my problem with this bill starts on page 62, starting with line 16. And so this goes beyond the scope of the university. It says Nebraska police officers and police departments have the authority to aid state and local law enforcement agencies. But then there's an and, enforce state laws, city and village ordinances. And underneath that, even within the university system, on page 62, it starts talking about affiliated athletic associations, events, fraternity, sorority, I'm assuming houses that may not be on campus. And then it says within the city, village, or county of where such property is described in 3A. So pretty much you can go back and forth. And I guess in a time where there's so much eyes on the police in general, I am very concerned about, let's take UNO or even Metro, since you introduced an amendment, leaving Metro campus on 30th and Sorensen Parkway and doing a felony stop on 30th Street. What training would they have to do that? Just to if somebody ran a red light, to pull them over and do that? Because you're also in charge with enforcing all state and city ordinances. So what training do you currently have for that kind of situation?
So, Senator, thank you for that question. Currently, police officers go through, campus police officers go through the Nebraska State Academy so they receive their initial 15-week training at that location. And then after completing their 15-week training session, they go through what's called field training, where they're assigned with a field training officer, and they go through 3 months of training with that particular officer, where they learn and train on topics like car stops, making car stops.
So in Omaha alone, if this were to pass, we would have OPD, Douglas County Sheriff, UNO, Metro Community College. Would Bellevue qualify if they had their own?
I'm not.
So we would have basically 4 different agencies in the Omaha area that could arrest and detain anybody for any city ordinance violation, including state patrol.
Yeah, I'm not able to answer that question, Senator.
Well, that's what the bill says, so I'll be able to say. Okay, no problem. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Welcome. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairman Wayne and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Charlotte Evans, CharlotteEvans. I serve as the Associate Vice Chancellor and Chief of Police for the Department of Public Safety for the University of Nebraska Omaha and the University of Nebraska Medical Center. I am appearing today in official capacity in support of LB 382 on behalf of the University of Nebraska system, and want to thank Senator Bostar for bringing this important legislation proposal forward. LB 382 is meant to recognize University of Nebraska Police Department and their local law enforcement officers in the same way it does all other sworn officers within our great state. The University of Nebraska campuses are often compared to small cities. Although their areas of education may be a bit more pronounced since students are a large part of our population and a lot of our buildings have classrooms, it's important to note that these campuses also have housing. They have child care centers, libraries, restaurants, medical facilities, business centers, and sporting venues. The professional law enforcement staff of the University of Nebraska Police on each respective campus work hard to maintain the safety of their campus community. The difference is that these University of Nebraska Police Departments and their officers are not recognized in state statute. These officers are trained and certified by law enforcement training centers approved by the Nebraska Crime Commission. They're granted powers that allow these officers to perform their duties in keeping the University of Nebraska community, visitors, and property safe. These officers patrol, respond to calls for service, conduct criminal investigations, perform threat assessments, and have powers of arrest. They're trained professionals who carry out the same duties and the same obligations as other sworn law enforcement in the state of Nebraska. To be clear, the scope of our officers' powers will not be affected by LB 382. They will continue to execute their duties to protect our campus community consistent with their current authority. LB 382 will simply codify the expectations that the University of Nebraska Police will follow state statutes, report state requirements and federally mandated data, and maintain appropriate policies and accreditation. It will also provide our officers the ability to collaborate with the police department on other university campuses and to assist other local law enforcement agencies when requested. LB 382 is about recognizing university sworn law enforcement as being accountable to the public like any other sworn agency. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Senator DeBoer.
That's me. So, is there a difference between campus officers and other officers? Like, why not just hire a bunch of, or why not just ask the Omaha police officers to police your campus at UNO, or, you know, the Lincoln ones at Lincoln? Is there a difference between what you want out of campus officers versus other police officers?
Well, thank you. It's a great question. I think that those questions have been raised in the past. Some of you may know that in Omaha, the University of Nebraska Omaha and the University of Nebraska Medical Center were security only for many years. In 2015, after several years of conversation with the Omaha Police Department, UNO, in agreement with the Omaha Police Department, decided to begin their own police agency. And I think a lot of that wasn't necessarily because of any relationship with OPD. The relationship has always been wonderful. It's more about the commitment to the campus and the ability to have officers there. The decision was made by the university to begin their own officers on campus, but the working relationship with OPD has always maintained. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. So, do you have when you're thinking about your police officers in Omaha, Lincoln, wherever, are you expecting that they are the same as other police officers in terms of their duties? Do they have additional sort of expectations because they're dealing with young people? Or do you think, no, it doesn't matter that they're on campus? I mean, is there any difference between the expectation for your officers and the expectations for other officers?
I believe the expectations for attending academies and the basic level trainings are necessary. The year-long training or the yearly trainings are necessary. So that basic level of requirement, I think, should be the same all across the board.
I think I'm asking you a different question. What we want out of these officers, is that different than what we want from other traditional officers?
I think no different than any area. Each agency will want something different from their officers. On a university campus, there is something to be said for the additional training in mental health, the additional training in de-escalation, the additional training in diversity, and the additional training in areas of event management because of the different sporting events and the types of programs that come in. So yes, I think that we do have areas of additional need for our officers.
And I would expect there's probably some difference with respect to, you know, young people interacting while drinking, right? And some of those sorts of things that you might have specialty emphasis in for your officers.
Correct.
Okay. So there is kind of a difference. This is not just, we want to have carbon copies of Omaha police officers here, you know, I think Omaha because I'm from Omaha, but Lincoln, you name it. So there is something different about these officers from other officers.
I think there's something different. Thank you. That the way you put that, I completely agree. There is something different for our officers. I believe there's difference in larger cities and smaller towns, moderate-sized towns, universities. All different departments have a different need, and it's equal to their community. The difference here is the cities and the counties are recognized in state statute. Today, university police are not recognized in state statute, and so that does come with some areas of concern. As an example, state statute 29215 prohibits us from entering in interlocal with other agencies, and that creates problems. If we were to have a critical incident, it doesn't mean we won't gain assistance, but being able to have an interlocal where we discuss and hammer out the needs between the agencies if there were to be critical incidents, the training, the equipment use, such like that. And those interlocals are done between municipalities and counties. We're unable to do that at this point. I'm also from Omaha, and that's a perfect example. Today, there's an interlocal between, I want to say it's 10 agencies. It's right at about 10 agencies in the general area. We're unable to be a part of that interlocal because of 29215. This change would allow that so that we could become a part of an interlocal.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm looking right at you. I'm like, ask the question. Senator Blood.
Hey, my mama raised me right. I wait until I have permission. So I want to build on what Senator DeBoer just said. So if this happens, then basically what you're saying is that the same as like when the Bellevue Police participate in anything, the ETJ, right? That we can meet with the county and we can work together and with Sarpy County Sheriffs or whatever. So that would be a benefit for you to be able to do that as well. And then can I ask how long you've been at the Med Center?
I've been at the Med Center about 3.5 years now. Prior to that, I started at UNO and then it became a joint department with UNMC.
So I'm going to have a question for you, but I'm going to tell you a quick story. So we're not here all afternoon. So several years ago, I was at the Folsom Center, and there is a young man about a foot taller than me and definitely more buff than I, who was physically abusing his pregnant girlfriend in front of my family. And I went over and schooled him, and to be polite, and then reported him to security. And the process that was put into place to protect that woman and how quick the response was exceptional. I noted when I left that they had him outside of the building, and they immediately brought forward resources for the woman. And I want to say that for me personally, I feel that you guys are already the best of the best and you've done an exceptional job. And so the question I'm going to ask again, because we keep hearing it, is how will this make you, in one sentence, better?
In all honesty, the legislation does not make us better. I believe our teams are already doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that on all campuses. I feel strongly about that. The issue is there are problems with not being named in state statute. And that problem, one of those problems is the inability of being a part of interlocals.
Right. Just so you can share resources in time
Yes.
of crisis.
Yes. It sounds interesting, but if an officer is killed in the line of duty, today their children can go to the university for free. Our officers are not named. We work for the university. If we were to have a death of an officer, their children would not be able to go to the university we work on for free.
I think that sounds like a very fair answer. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I have a question. What authority right now in statute do you have to enforce city ordinance violations like traffic?
We have an MOU with the city police, with the Omaha Police Department in order to be able to use city ordinance. State statute and city ordinance, sometimes they explain differently, or the city prosecutor prefers the use of city ordinance rather than the state statute. And so there's value in being able to issue, if you're issuing a citation, to be able to issue off the city ordinance versus the state statute. Without that MOU that we currently have with OPD, anything that if we were to issue a citation or make an arrest, it would have to be on state statute. Does that?
So we're saying the city of Omaha has the ability to contract out their police force?
I don't know that I'm not sure how best to explain it, but it's granting us authority to use the city ordinances.
So where's the liability in that? Who carries the liability?
I would have to defer to our university council.
That opens up a lot more questions that maybe the introducer might want to hold this bill instead of letting me do something with it. Okay, any other questions? That's interesting. Thank you for being here. You got me thinking that. Next proponent. Everybody's like, I'm not going up there. Welcome.
Hello. Chairperson Wayne, my name is Jacqueline Clinto. I am Associate General Counsel and the Director of University Records for the University of Nebraska system. I don't have prepared testimony, but our chiefs we're in capable hands with them, but they both reserved a question for our office. So I thought I would address both those, starting first with the question raised by Senator McKinney related to the scope of qualified immunity of our university police force. The answer to your question is this bill does not affect the scope of qualified immunity for our police officers. As state employees, they already have the full pelotony of qualified immunity protection under existing constitutional law. So regardless of the success of this bill, they would continue to have that right and protection under existing law. And then Chairperson Wayne, I know you had just raised some questions that implicated the MOU between the university and the city of Omaha. I wanted to reserve answering that specific question. I have not personally reviewed the scope of the MOU, though you had some questions about its reach and how that power is delegated. I'm happy to have our office reach out to you after a thorough review to kind of define the contours of how that relationship works between our police department and the city of Omaha.
Any questions from the committee? So walk me through an internal affair complaint. So if a citizen feels that they were not handled in the right way and they want to file a complaint, where do they go?
If the internal affairs complaint was as to an officer of
Correct.
one of our police departments, I'm not sure how the specific process is initiated, and I don't know if it's specific department to department, though I'm happy to answer that and indicate whether or not it is related to, the capacity and scope of what ordinance or state law they were enforcing at the time of the incident. But I'm happy to answer that question as well.
So part of my hesitation of even moving this bill forward is we put a lot of emphasis on community policing, community training, there's this whole community around police to try to build relationships. And now we're going to throw in two entities in Omaha, Metro and University, who haven't, nor probably in their scope will put in the same type of time, of going into the community, meeting these folks, et cetera, where there's a relationship with the community, but they still have the same authority to pull them over and do all the things that a cop can do. I'm having a hard time understanding to compare, putting those two together. Can you kind of explain that for me?
Sure. I think that's a great question, and I think a legitimate one as well. I think it's important to remember though that the scope and reach of the authority of our police force is really unaltered by this bill. It's the purpose of including us definitionally is to essentially cut the red tape that our police force currently experiences through having to have a state commission and that process, and not allowing us the same, commissioning and ability to have kind of an autonomous, force. But really, we have and are executing on the powers to the full scope that this bill allows already.
So then back to Senator DeBoer's question, I don't understand what's the purpose of the bill if you're already doing it.
I think there are a couple of interesting aspects of this bill, and to Senator DeBoer's earlier question as well. I think Chief Evans touched extensively on the interlocal agreement aspect. That is a change that allows us to collaborate with other governmental entities in a way that we do not have a statutory authority to currently. The other, I think, important aspect here to remember is that we didn't, when we inserted the definition into the definition of police officer, university police, we did so in every aspect of police oversight and authority. So this will now create state mandated training obligations, policies that we are now voluntarily enacting and complying with, but will now have a state statutory obligation to maintain and update in accordance with state law. It also requires state mandated training as well as state mandated general reporting requirements that, as I said, we do voluntarily comply with, but now will be required by law to continuously. So I would say those are the two aspects that are most impactful and why the bill is necessary.
That's the last thing I'm gonna say, because I got a lot to think about on this one, but I don't know if I would pull over if I'm on 72nd and Dodge and a Metro cop pulled up behind me in the dark. If I looked at it and it wasn't a cop, I'd probably keep driving for my own safety. Now I'm getting charged with resisting arrest because I don't know Metro can go to 72nd and Dodge and enforce a law enforcement, a traffic violation. But under law, you could do that. So, I mean, I'm looking at this from a public safety standpoint of somebody pulls up with me behind with flashing lights. If I don't know it as a cop car or a state trooper, I'm not just gonna pull over in a dark spot and say, okay. I mean, anyway, don't respond to that. I'm just giving you another scenario where I'm hesitant, but any other questions from the committee?
I'll ask.
Yes, Senator DeBoer.
Thank you, Senator Ring. So is there a way, other than the way that you've outlined in this bill, where we could, first of all, I think it would be a cleanup process to say that your officers, if killed in the line of duty, you would get the same benefits than others, and some things like that. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I think we could certainly find a way to clean up some of those statutes, particularly if you know what all those omissions are. But the interlocal agreement, if that's really the thing that is sort of driving all of this, would there be, and I don't know enough about the structure to know, would there be a way to allow you to just say, and also you can be in interlocal agreements without making this entire change, still keeping you where you are structurally, but just adding, but folks who are structurally like you are allowed to get into interlocal agreements? Is that possible legally?
I think, yes, that is a legally possible way to address that aspect of this, right? But I think that there are additional considerations. One that was highlighted by Chief Evans, I think, is that this is also allows us the ability to collaborate with our other campuses where we are kind of bounded as forces, where we all the University of Nebraska system has 3 police forces who can't collaborate with each other under existing law as well. This would address that issue so that we can, collaborate on enforcement when we have the University of Nebraska Kearney Police Force is much closer to operations in Curtis. If we had an issue there, they're actually under the jurisdiction of Lincoln. So we've kind of got these weird artificial barriers to collaboration just internally that this addresses. As I said, the interlocal piece. So there are aspects of that. Also, as you indicated, the benefits that this gives our officers in alignment with other law enforcement officers in the state. I think because there's that array of considerations that perhaps only addressing the interlocal problem would leave some of these other issues unaddressed that we believe are equally important.
Is there a way to go through and sort of address all of these issues that you've identified without giving a sort of carte blanche of statewide law enforcement agency, which is essentially, I think, some of the concern that I'm hearing is that we're sort of creating a statewide law enforcement agency other than the state troopers, so would there, like, if we had, okay, we could do interlocal agreements, we got the benefits fixed, and we provided some sort of reciprocity between all of your campuses, would that solve the issues, or is there really something about the structural piece that's going on here?
That's a great question, Senator. I think there's absolutely a way to perhaps structure this in a limited way that addresses some of those discrete issues that we've addressed here. But as we endeavor to, amend the statutes, it's kind of hard to draw the line where to end, because we wanted to have the accountability piece too. So we were inserting, because we do have these expansions of our interlocal ability, our expansions for collaboration, we thought it was important to also bind our police force to the reporting and training requirements. And then at that point, it makes sense from a consistency aspect and to amend the definition so that we are broadly defined as a police officer in the same way that other law enforcement agencies are, so that, one, for clarity and for a clear scope of authority without inserting and University of Nebraska police only in certain aspects of the law. We thought that it was better both logistically and from a compliance perspective and equitably to just amend the entire scheme to allow for the definitional change.
There might be some benefit that could be had by allowing your officers to retain a distinction from other officers, that if we could get to some of those other discrete issues, even a perceptual issue that was discussed might allow some folks to actually trust your officers more because they don't have the same kinds of maybe baggage or something. I don't know. So that's all the questions. Thank you for your answers.
Senator Black.
Thank you, Senator Rain. I'll make this really quick. So listening to this last conversation, didn't I understand this correctly at the beginning, that they're assigned basically a jurisdiction? A jurisdiction would be, because I compare this to what I know from municipalities and counties. So the jurisdiction would be UNL. I know it showed in like one case, it's like UNL and housing, but they have a jurisdiction. So they're not going to be driving down Dodge Street unless you're in an interlocal agreement and they're asked to come into the ETJ or whatever they're going to call it, into that area to assist with something. Isn't that accurate?
I think that is an accurate.
So I hear the concerns from the other senators, but if you go back to the bill and you go back to what's the definition of jurisdiction, those scenarios don't mirror that definition. Would you say that that's accurate?
I would agree with you, Senator.
All right, thank you.
Just for the clear, are we talking about current situations, or are you saying underneath this bill, what Senator Blood and you just described is accurate?
I would say under both. And under the new definition of jurisdiction, while it is changed so that we can collaborate with our other campuses, it doesn't affect the kind of structure and collaborative aspect Senator Blood just described, as far as we are only going to, I think she said 72nd and Dodge to assist. These are engagement, law enforcement efforts, not enforcement, under both the current law and proposed legislation.
So you're saying that if somebody from UNL, police officer from UNL is driving to Kearney and there's somebody going 100 miles an hour, they're not pulling them over?
Jurisdiction. I don't know that I'd want to speak to that type of, just not being an operational law enforcement officer, but I suppose I'm.
Because it doesn't say jurisdiction being on campus. It says you can enforce state law and city and ordinance.
Within the defined jurisdiction following that.
That's not how the bill. All right, well, if that's what you want the bill to read, then we can help you do that, but that's not what the bill reads, in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, I didn't see either of those. It's the whole county. Yeah. Well, no, it's just, page 62, line 30 says, within the city, village, or county where such property. That means university property. That means you have authority over the entire county of such property. Doesn't limit you to that property. Page 62, line 30, 31.
I would agree with that. So the definition of jurisdiction, so we can enforce state law as defined in section 3A,
Which
B,
is,
C, D, yeah.
yeah, which is building. If you have a building within the county, you can govern or execute or enforce state law throughout the entire county based off of that definition, not just at that location. The way it's currently written.
I agree with that reading.
Thank you. That may not be the intent, but that's what we're here to figure out. All right, appreciate it. Any other questions? Sorry. Thank you for being here today. Wasn't that crazy. Any other proponent? Welcome.
Thank you. Senator Wayne, Chairperson, Senators. My name is David Friend. It's DAVID FRIEND. I'm here to testify in my capacity as Police Chief at Metro Community College. We are here to support LB 382 with the amendments that we hope occur that would include state colleges and universities, because Metropolitan Community College does have a police department, has had since 2010. We've been an active police department. And in a word, our motivation for this is accountability. If you look at the statutory language for crime and punishment definitions, Narcan, who can administer Narcan, naloxone, fingerprint cards if you make a felony arrest, protection from domestic abuse orders, the stuff that has already been discussed, like killed in the line of duty benefits, those types of things. But ours are basically accountability, because right now we comply. Body worn cameras is another one. We comply with the statute, even though the statutes elsewhere do not define us as a law enforcement agency. So we voluntarily comply, but we're not required to. This statute, if you change the statutes to include in the areas that we are concerned with, which is not necessarily all of the bill that the university introduced, we want the accountability to go along with the obligations that we are already exercising. So that, in a word, is what we're looking for, is the accountability. DNA Identification Act. There's a number of public health and welfare issues that we deal with that the statutes do not recognize us as law enforcement officers, as police officers. So we're trying to have the statute with the obligation match what we do or try to do on a regular basis. And we're a little bit different from the university system in that we have 4 counties that we are responsible for. So on occasion, our officers do travel from location to location within that 4-county service area. And on occasion, they may run into something that a reasonable and prudent person would say, yeah, the officer should have done something. An intoxicated driver putting people at risk, that kind of thing. And I can tell you, if the last dozen years are any proof, we write about 7 tickets a year. Out of the 28 that we write, 7 are court appearance, average 21 are warning. So we're not out there looking to do traffic. We're more concerned with what goes on inside the moat, if you will, our campus locations, than what goes on outside of that. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator McKinney.
Thank you, Chair Wayne. Thank you, Mr. Friend, for your testimony. I have no problem holding y'all accountable and to higher standards. All for it. My issue is you have a campus, well, you have 2 campuses that are located in probably the most over-policed areas of the state. And I live by Metro, and even just the mention of possibly allowing y'all to be able to cross the street and police is an issue for me. So I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I'm all for holding y'all accountable. I just don't know if I want y'all to go across the street because it's already over policed.
Well, that's the example I gave, Senator, of in the last year, 28 traffic stops, 7 court appearances, 21 warning tickets, and we made about 20 arrests, of which 5 or 6 of them were for warrants. The rest of them were for things that we can't say no. Shoplifting.
Yeah, but that's my fear is all that will increase.
Well, those are all on campus.
But the way this bill is written, it's possible that it can increase and you guys will be able to just cross the street and arrest people and hold people accountable for whatever reason. But that's what I would have a problem with. It's already an over-policed community as is.
I understand. I understand your point. We have 4 counties and we have officers in 3 of the 4.
Thank
you. Any other comments or questions? This is a let it out Wednesday. We're gonna talk as we do things today. No more questions. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Any other proponent? Any opponent?
Good afternoon. My name is Rose Godinez, spelled ROSEGODINEZ, and I am here to testify on behalf of the ACLU of Nebraska in opposition to LB 382. LB 382 essentially deputizes University of Nebraska police departments with the full uninhibited power of being a Nebraska law enforcement agency. And for all intents and purposes, it creates a law enforcement agency under the state to our already over-policed communities of color and that they already face. The fiscal statement on this bill does not truly reflect the cost of continuing to contribute to the school-to-prison pipeline and racial profiling in searches, arrests, and traffic stops. I looked at the UNK and UNL annual campus safety and fire safety and security reports yesterday and didn't see the alleged crime perpetrators disaggregated by race or ethnicity. As such, I'm unable to present you with that data to know whether campus police, like our local law enforcement agencies, are disproportionately targeting students of color, students with disabilities. But that in itself, I hope, causes the committee to pause. I can tell you that students of color and students with disabilities in K-12 schools are disproportionately referred to law enforcement, and I do not have reason to believe that it would be any different on our universities or campuses. Across the country, the presence of these law enforcement agencies on and off campus is not welcome, not by students and not by the communities at large. For example, following demands organized by students, the University of Minnesota recently agreed to cut ties with the Minneapolis Police Department. Northwestern University, Columbia University, and New York University students are also calling on their administrators to cut ties with local police. Despite their intended role as peacekeepers, university police are also already responsible for violence against students and local residents alike. And I see my time is coming up, so I will just
briefly touch on some questions from Senator McKinney and Senator Wayne about jurisdiction because we share the same concerns, specifically on Section 34. They can enforce, of course, state law and village ordinances, and it applies to not only property which is operated, but also property affiliated, and affiliated is not defined in the bill. It also says it can, law enforcement can contribute as necessary anywhere students, faculty, staff are present. As necessary is also not defined. It also allows jurisdiction wherever University of Nebraska activities are taking place. Activities is not defined. And of course, that's not an exhaustive list, but there's a number of concerns with this bill. And for those reasons, we urge the committee to indefinitely postpone this bill. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? Senator McKinney.
Thank you. And you mentioned, and this goes to my other concern in your testimony, you mentioned property affiliated. Metro has a extension of their campus at 75 North in my district.
Correct.
Would that mean they'll be allowed to police 75 North now, which causes other issues in my opinion, but thank you for pointing that out.
Completely agree, Senator McKinney. Under the reading of this bill, it would allow for that.
All right. Seeing any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Any other opponent? 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 Anybody testifying in a neutral capacity? All right. Seeing none, I'm assuming you're going to waive closing or you want to close? Okay. We have, for the record, one letter in opposition. That'll be closing the hearing on LB 382 and opening the hearing on LB 777. Welcome back, Nate.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wayne and members of the Judiciary Committee. Senator Bostar wishes he could be here, but he's introducing a bill in another committee. My name is Nathan Janulevich. For the record, that's Nathan Janulewicz. I'm the legislative aide for Senator Elliott Bostar. Today, I'm presenting LB 777, a bill that would update provisions of the Automatic License Plate Reader Privacy Act. Automatic license plate readers, or ALPRs, are a computer-controlled camera system that are typically mounted on street poles or attached to police vehicles. ALPRs automatically capture all license plate numbers that come into view, along with the location, date, and time. The data in real time is checked against a database of license plates the system is actively looking for, such as a stolen vehicle, vehicles associated with missing persons, or vehicles associated with outstanding warrants. If ALPR camera scans a plate that is on the list, the system sends an alert to the police. ALPRs can also be used as an investigative tool. Since ALPRs collect data, date, time, and location, every plate in the system investigators can search and analyze historic data. For example, an investigator may enter the location where a serious crime was committed, such as a robbery or a shooting, to identify vehicles seen nearby at the time. For example, there were 3 homicides involving young victims in Omaha that were solved in the last 6 months with the aid of license plate reader data from Douglas County. Unfortunately, current statute authorizes ALPRs lack clarity, in turn the lack of transparency and potential abuse of ALPR technology. The purpose of LB 777 is to add clarity to the ALPR statute, thereby improving transparency and accountability for our criminal justice system. First, LB 777 approves transparency by making it clear that the use of ALPRs can be disclosed in court proceedings. Law enforcement agencies in Nebraska are currently using ALPRs to investigate crimes and make arrests, but there is uncertainty around whether this can be directly referenced in court proceedings, causing confusion for both the public and law enforcement. LB 777 makes a minor adjustment to the Automatic License Plate Reader Privacy Act to make it clear that the use of ALPRs can be directly referenced in court proceedings. Second, LB 777 improves accountability to our criminal justice system by prohibiting parking enforcement from the use of ALPRs and providing a penalty for intentional misuse of the ALPR system. The ALPR system collects a lot of information that can cause potential privacy concerns. LB 777 adds transparency and accountability by requiring agencies using ALPRs to keep a log of every manual entry or query of the system by an officer. Those logs will be required to undergo an annual audit. LB 777 provides a criminal penalty for intentional violation of the Automatic License Plate Reader Privacy Act, such as to use it to track a private citizen unconnected with an active criminal investigation. There are 6 law enforcement agencies in Nebraska that are currently using ALPRs. We will likely see an expansion of their use in the years to come. LB 777 ensures law enforcement has the tools they need to keep our communities safe and installs safeguards to protect Nebraskans against misuse. Before I wrap up, I just want to mention the distributed letter from former Senator Matt Hansen, who was the original introducer of original introducer of the Automatic License Plate Reader Privacy Act. He suggests adding a clarifying language in section 5, represented in the amendment that was also distributed. Senator Bostar supports the amendment and would ask the committee to support LB 777.
Thank you. Any questions from the, first proponent. I do have one question for you though. What committee did Bostar choose over us? Oh, revenue. Make sure to kill all those bills with revenue. Welcome to your judiciary.
Hello, my name is Lieutenant Dan Martin, DANMARTIN. I'm here representing the Omaha Police Officers Association. I'm the vice president. I admittedly come here today. We in Omaha do not have an ALPR system. I have spoken to investigators about this bill, and particularly the uses of this bill. But I do know, I have read through this, and I tried reading through the Privacy Act that was, I believe it was last year, it's very confusing for me to even understand and other law enforcement to see when can we use this, how can we not use this, and can the evidence that we obtain or data that we obtain be used in court proceedings. So I think that this bill is good because it cleans up a lot of that language and defines when and when we can't use this data or collect it. When it comes to storing and it comes to that type of thing, I have no idea about. So any of those questions will have to be directed to somebody that's used this system before. I can tell you that LB 77, when I've talked to homicide investigators just within the last 6 months, and he had brought this up, but I wanted to give you a few more examples about how the LPR system assisted in the Omaha Police Department investigating some of these homicides that helped us. Within 24 hours on each of these, we either had a suspect identified or suspects arrested, which in my opinion can reduce their ability to go out and commit more crimes or carnage on the streets. So in December of last year, Omaha Police responded to a homicide in the area of 37th and Pratt. And again, I'm not going to be able to get into the fine details of any of these because they still have not made it through the court system, so I won't name names of victims or suspects. But I will give you general information about this. A young girl lying in her bed was shot to death multiple times. Within hours, detectives had arrested 4 individuals for her senseless homicide by using license plate reader data. Quick capture of these violent gunmen likely prevented further shootings, murders, and other crimes on the streets. In August of last year, Omaha Police responded to a neighborhood off Sorensen Parkway in North Omaha. A young male was found shot to death. Within the same day, Omaha Police had identified a potential suspect using license plate reader data, and within a week of that time, the suspect was arrested. Again, in August of last year, Omaha police responded to a South Omaha neighborhood for a person who had been bludgeoned to death. Within 24 hours, a suspect had been identified and tracked all the way to Des Moines, Iowa, using license plate reader systems. And so an arrest was made within 24 hours. The language in this bill make it clear and provide law enforcement the technology, tools, and resources to continue to combat violent crime. With that, I'll answer any questions that I can.
Any questions from the committee? Senator DeBoer.
Thank you. I may have misunderstood. You said they don't have them in Omaha, but then you were.
I'm sorry, we've used State Patrol and Douglas County Sheriff as assist us with them. We do not have the technology with the police department in Omaha.
The Omaha doesn't, but the Douglas County and the
State Patrol and other agencies, I think you said 6 agencies in Nebraska, and I believe the Iowa State Patrol and agencies across Iowa as well.
And you may not know the answer to this. Can you, I mean, if I speed or something like that, can you use this?
This isn't a speeding camera, like they
I know
have
it's
some of
not
those.
that, but I mean, like, let's say I do, and then now does that mean that I'm sort of, it opens the floodgates, or I do some other traffic violation? Does that open the floodgates for my license plate to now, every time I go anywhere, it's recorded?
It's recorded. I mean, every time a vehicle passes through an area that has a license plate reader, those digital images of your license plate are captured.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Geis.
I've been very quiet. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just because this reads a license plate doesn't necessarily give you the person, correct?
No,
It's a starting place for an investigation,
correct.
but it could always be a stolen vehicle, doesn't necessarily have to match the owner of the vehicle.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? That ain't worth it. Never mind.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next, proponent. Seeing no proponents, opponent. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Spike Eichel, S-P-I-K-E-E-I-C-K-H-O-L-T. I'm appearing on behalf of the ACLU of Nebraska and on behalf of the Nebraska Criminal Defense Attorney Association in opposition to LB 777. I'm handing out a sort of a pamphlet or some things I'm going to refer to in my 3 minutes. Senator Bostar staff mentioned that in 2018, the legislature did approve the license plate reader bill. It was passed 72 votes to 2, with 2 people not voting. If you look at the current law, it is a compromise, and it may not mean anything to Senator Bostar, but I would respectfully suggest that this body honor that. If you look at the current law, and you've heard the people testify, law enforcement can use the license plate reader data now. What LB 77 does, respectively, it lets law enforcement use it whenever they want, however they want. This is mass surveillance operated by law enforcement with the tech companies. The way that these license plate cameras work, it's not a live stream, it's not a red light camera. These cameras are focused to capture the plate information. They can capture up to 100 plates a minute. They can be stationary on poles or they can be in moving vehicles. All of that data is harvested, if you will, and collected by the companies that provide the service to the local law enforcement agencies. And there's 2 companies, one is Vigilant and one is Flock, for the 2 companies that do work in Nebraska. If law enforcement wants to retrieve a specific license plate information, they contact their provider and that information is given. But for 95+% or whatever of the people who are driving around the city, that information is simply retained by the provider. I have selected copies of the 3 contracts and I hand wrote for Lancaster County, Douglas County, and the city of Kearney, which are 3 of the 6 jurisdictions. And I've selected those parts, and you can clearly see that in the contract, it states that the data that they collect is owned by the companies. Why does that matter? And I'm not trying to be paranoid here, but I'm trying to say this one thing, and that is, for whatever reason, these tech companies collect this data. You see a news article in this material. Last November, we, along with a number of other states, settled a lawsuit with Google because Google was impermissibly tracking people's travel data. In other words, there's some value in this for these companies, and I don't know what it is, and maybe it's just marketing data, whatever. But the reason that they provide this service basically for free for law enforcement, in my opinion, is they collect this information. I say that because you shouldn't facilitate that any more than it's already done. We should not let law enforcement have access to information. It is highly detailed information. I attached a news article regarding the Dodge County attorney who was forced to resign, and I noticed something on there that right now, under the current data points that law enforcement have access now, there is no consequence whatsoever if law enforcement impermissibly accesses that and uses that. And the last page of the materials I handed out was a portion from the most recent lawsuit against the city of Lincoln and Chief Ewens and others, in which the complainant, a fired female Lincoln police officer, noted that male officers regularly access databases impermissibly to look up information on attractive girls and females that they contacted. I'll answer any questions if anyone has any. Sorry, I almost went over.
Any questions from Senator Geis, followed by Senator McKinney?
I'm a little confused here. So you've spoken to Mr. Bostar, I'm sorry, Senator Bostar?
I have not.
You have not?
I have not.
Okay, so he's not aware of your objection?
He may be aware of my objection. I've not spoken with him. I generally let senators know if I'm going to oppose their bill. I did not with Senator Bostar.
Then in that case, that's all. Thanks.
Spike, why doesn't Omaha have automatic license plate readers?
So I think that earlier testifier mentioned that Douglas County Sheriff's does have an agreement with Flock Security or Flock something. And they had, I think, a year-long trial period where the service and the cameras are provided for free. And then Douglas County had a proposal before the Omaha City Council to let them install some of their cameras around the city of Omaha to somehow use it. It was not necessarily going to be for the benefit of the Omaha Police Department. I testified in opposition to it. We did because we saw that as an expansion. And for whatever reason, the City Council of Omaha did not accommodate Douglas County Sheriff's request. So Douglas County Sheriff still uses it, but it's not necessarily being used with or on Omaha City equipment. I can't speak to why. Perhaps I raised some of the same issues regarding privacy, data harvesting that we raised as well. I think this is just going to facilitate over surveillance on areas and people who are already overly surveilled. It's going to intensify over policing for areas and people who are already policed too much in a way that sort of marries these tech companies with law enforcement, and it's very intrusive. Admittedly, these things have value. And if you look at the exceptions that were drafted in the original bill, LE 93 from 2018, law enforcement can use it, and they do, you heard before. And I think admittedly, we weren't necessarily happy with the final version of the bill. We prefer these things not be allowed at all. But I think this body did the right thing and came to some kind of consensus. There's no reason to disturb that.
Thank
you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next opponent. Anybody testifying in neutral capacity? All right, we have received one letter of support. Designate will close the hearing on LB 777 and open the hearing on LB 7. You're not staying for months? Oh, man.
Okay, with that, we'll open the hearing on LB 788. So welcome to your Judiciary Committee, Senator Wayne.
I was just reading the bill to see what it does. Finally figured out what it does. All right. My name is Justin Wayne, JustinWayne, and I serve as a senator of District 13, which is North Omaha, Northeast Douglas County. Today, I'm here to introduce LB 788, which will designate the State Patrol as the agency responsible for investigating criminal activity when it occurs within the Department of Corrections. The State Patrol shall provide the results of any investigation conducted to the Inspector General. A summary of these investigations will be provided to the Clerk of the Legislature along with the Inspector General's annual end-of-the-year corrections report. I have been informed many times over the course of my tenure about the inherent conflict that arises between the Department of Correction when it's tasked with investigating its own staff. There should be more oversight, and since we continue to have oversight conversations in this body, I thought it'd be a good idea to have a conversation about who oversees Department of Correction as far as any kind of criminal violation. I think this bill is pretty clear cut, straightforward, not trying to add more responsibility to the state patrol, but I do think it's hard for police to sometimes police themselves, particularly in the Department of Corrections. So that's the point of this bill, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Oh, yes, Senator Blood.
Thank you, Vice Chair DeBoer. Senator Wayne, doesn't that fall on the county now?
In some of the counties it does, but again, I think part of the issue at the county level is also the cost.
Yeah, it's definitely, again, an unfunded mandate.
Right.
It's like, if an inmate dies, they pay for that investigation, they pay for the grand jury investigation.
Correct.
So, so is it mandated in state statute that the counties do it right now, or?
I don't believe it is mandated in the state. I don't know that answer. I'll have to get to you that answer. I don't know that answer for sure.
I mean, maybe not mandated, but they certainly have been paying for it.
Well, they have been, exactly.
All right, thank you.
Other questions for Senator Wayne? Thank you, Senator Wayne. First proponent testifier. Welcome.
Hello again. Vice Chair, Senators. My name is Matt Barral, M-A-T-T-B-A-R-R-A-L-L. I am the Vice President of Nebraska State Fraternal Order Police. I am here to speak in support of Senator Wayne's bill, not only to have uniformity in investigation and prosecution for any offenses that may be committed by anyone within the prison system, but on behalf of the State Corrections Lodge, which is Fraternal Order of Police, to also find uniformity in investigation and prosecution for crimes against our members, our corrections officers, who are assaulted on a daily basis. And there has not been uniformity county by county and agency by agency in its investigation. So we do support that, not only for the reasons that Senator Wayne has described, but also to protect corrections officers. I will say that I think that 2 state patrol investigators is probably nowhere near enough. I know I'm speaking for this bill, but I would find that they probably need to be more, and I'm sure the state patrol would say the same thing. I don't think 2 investigators would be anywhere near enough for the crimes that are committed across the state. So that's all I have to say. Questions?
All right, are there any questions? Senator Blood.
Thank you, Vice Chair DeBoer. So yeah, I'm looking at your fiscal note. Who did your fiscal note for you here? Kenneth Boggs?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I saw the fiscal note paid for 2 state patrol investigators, and that was all. That doesn't seem like enough to me.
Yeah, it doesn't. And so would that money come from your budget then, do you know?
For the State Fraternal Order Police,
No, for the state patrol.
I have no idea. I don't know for the state patrol. I'm sorry.
I see someone in here that might know that, so I may wait to hear from that. All right, yeah, I have concerns that would be enough, and we've seen a lot of wonky fiscal notes this session because we've had all day hearings, so it may just not be right. So, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you. Next proponent. Is there anyone here who would like to testify in opposition to this bill? Come on down.
Good afternoon. Vice Chair DeBoer, members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Colonel John Bolduc, Johnbolduc, Superintendent of the Nebraska State Patrol. I'm here to testify in opposition to LB 788, which places the responsibility to investigate criminal activity within any Department of Correctional Services facility with the Nebraska State Patrol. Currently, the State Patrol has a positive working relationship with the Department of Corrections and actively investigates criminal activity within their facilities when requested. The State Patrol can continue to assist the Department of Corrections with criminal investigations without legislative changes. LB 788 transfers all Department of Corrections investigators to the State Patrol. The investigators employed by the Department of Corrections also conduct a wide variety of non-criminal investigations, including matters related to violations of institutional policy, personnel issues, and regulation violations. The State Patrol is not the agency best suited to conduct internal policy and regulatory investigations within the correctional facilities. That duty lies most appropriately with the Department of Corrections. Furthermore, the Department of Corrections employees will not automatically be able to serve as Nebraska State Patrol investigators. Should the Department of Corrections investigators meet our minimum qualifications and wish to apply, they would be required to successfully graduate from our training academy. They would then begin their career as troopers patrolling Nebraska's roadways. Investigators within the State Patrol assigned to investigate criminal matters are seasoned, certified law enforcement officers with numerous hours of specialized training. They accumulate years of valuable law enforcement experience before being selected to serve as investigators. Allowing the Department of Corrections to continue their internal investigations and to receive assistance from the State Patrol on criminal matters ensures each respective type of investigation is run by those best suited for the task. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for this testifier? Senator Geis?
Thank you for your testimony. I'm curious if you would clarify, do you, as a State Patrol agency, do you oversee currently crimes that happen within the facility between inmate to inmate and then inmate to officer, officer to inmate? What exactly is your purview right now?
So thank you, Senator, for the question. Right now, we handle all grand jury cases. That means any death associated with the correctional facility. So those could be homicides, those could be natural deaths, those could be accidents. We are required to investigate those, present those findings to the grand jury in the respective county where that facility resides. We are asked to assist the Department of Corrections from time to time on complex investigations, which may involve contraband being smuggled in from the outside. Those investigators are often asking for our assistance with those. We do occasionally assist with assaults that happen within institutions, whether it's against correctional staff members and on occasion inmate-to-inmate violence.
Okay, thank you. So your objection is the other internal issues that this would involve?
Yes, Senator, to be clear, we already assist when they have a complex case that needs our resources. But those investigators, as I understand it, and certainly someone from corrections can illuminate that for you, but they do a wide variety of other duties that we would have no expertise in, nor any desire to do those.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator McKinney?
Thank you, Senator DeBoer. Quick question. So let's say in the hypothetical, a correctional officer gets busted for bringing contraband into the prisons. Are you saying you would feel comfortable with the department investigating first and then you stepping in?
Well, first of all, thank you for the question, Senator. I'm not sure about the internal process within corrections that first brings those investigations to light. So when they get to us, whatever that process is, we handle those investigations involving a correctional staff member who's alleged to have committed a crime.
So, but if they began the investigation prior to you coming in, you would feel comfortable with that?
Well, yes, Senator. Our job is to take all investigations wherever the facts lead us.
So you believe that a department that can barely staff the institutions we currently have, a department that has issues with contraband being brought in by their employees, can also police themselves properly prior to you stepping in?
Well, Senator, again, I'm not sure how the internal process works whereby we're notified of those. So I don't know how much investigation is done by their staff before that's brought to our attention. I'm just not familiar with that process.
So what if hypothetically you come in and you see that somebody from the department interviewed a staff person about the introduction of contraband into the prison? You would be okay with that?
Well, Senator, and thanks for illuminating the fact that that's a hypothetical. It really depends on what the facts are. I understand, I believe what you're getting at, if I can ask you a question about your question. We want to make sure that we're just not taking the word of perhaps a staff member who might be in collusion. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes.
Thank you, Senator, for the clarification. Clearly, no one's more concerned about criminal behavior by state employees than we are. And if we have somebody inside who's doing the wrong things, it's our job to figure that out and bring that person to justice and get them out of that facility.
Thank you.
Other questions? I don't see any. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Next opponent.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair DeBoer and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Diane Sabat-Karine, D-I-A-N-E, S-A-B-A-T-K-A-R-I-N-E. I'm the Interim Director of the Nebraska Department of Correctional Services, and I am here today to provide testimony in opposition of LB 788. The current investigation system allows the department to safely manage its facilities and gives the State Patrol the information needed to pursue criminal actions. LB 788 proposes changes to a system that is working effectively. Our investigative staff conduct intelligence gathering and investigate day-to-day activities within our prisons. This sometimes involves investigating criminal activity, but also involves investigating incidents that may not result in prosecution, but which can influence classification and housing assignment decisions. The current system gives NDCS immediate access to information in situations where time is of the essence. Having internal investigators allows us to be immediately aware of circumstances so that we can make informed decisions to maintain safe operations. As currently constructed, LB 788 only requires the State Patrol to provide information on investigations into criminal activity to the Inspector General and not to the department. It is vital for NDCS to have access to this information in a timely manner in order to keep staff and inmates safe. We have 2 investigators who are law enforcement certified. Employing individuals with law enforcement expertise improves communication with outside law enforcement agencies and simplifies the process of referring cases to the State Patrol, local law enforcement, and county attorneys. According to NDCS policy, NDCS investigators conduct investigations into alleged acts by inmates that could constitute misdemeanors or felonies, except for criminal investigations involving murder, attempted murder, in-custody deaths, or arson, which are referred directly to the State Patrol. For criminal investigations of NDCS employees, inmate escapes, or incidents involving serious bodily injury, the State Patrol is notified before an investigation begins, and our investigators assist in the investigation as directed by the Patrol. We also refer investigations to the State Patrol involving criminal activity on facility property by individuals who are not NDCS staff or inmates. NDCS has developed a good working relationship with the Patrol for when criminal activity occurs in our facilities. We appreciate the quality of the Patrol's work, and we hope to continue that relationship going forward. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Senator DeKay.
Yes. In my notes here, it says the estimated cost to the NSP is as follows. The State Patrol investigative officers, including personnel and benefit costs, are $136,957 for the fiscal year 23-24, and it would jump up to $273,913 for the fiscal year 24-25. Are my notes correct? And if they are, why would there be almost a double?
Well, my fiscal note doesn't include those exact figures. So part of that could be if there's a difference in what our investigators are paid versus what State Patrol investigators are paid. So I don't know. I would have to look into the fiscal.
I was just curious if there was going to be more personnel added to this or not going forward?
Again, my understanding of how the bill is written, the 2 investigators we have, those FTEs would be transferred to the patrol. So no more additional FTEs.
Thank you.
Senator Holcroft.
Thank you, Vice Chair DeBoer. This is just for my own education, being new. You know, when we toured the penitentiary, we had the ombudsman with us. And my understanding is that the inmates do have access to her. Is there a way for someone to report then from an inmate that there's been criminal activity, and how is that handled? And is there a pathway to the state patrol if the ombudsman is not satisfied with the action?
Certainly. So the entire inmate population has access to the Office of the Public Counsel. There's a number on their inmate calling system that they can contact them at any time. Those calls are not recorded, so they certainly can reach out to the Office of Public Counsel at any point. They also are free to contact any law enforcement agency via U.S. mail that they choose to. We don't interfere with that at all. So, or they can come to us if they believe a criminal activity has occurred. If they're not comfortable reporting it to us, they have other ways for which they can report that to outside entities.
And the Office of the Public, what was it? Office of the Public Defender?
Public Counsel.
Counsel, sorry.
The Ombudsman.
And she is kind of independent. I mean, she can take that information and go anywhere with it. I mean, she could go to the state patrol
She could
if
go
she
to the
doesn't
patrol.
feel like the Department of Corrections is taking proper action.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator McKinney.
Thank you, Senator DeBoer, and thank you for your testimony. So do you think your department can police itself or investigate itself? Is what you're saying? You're more suited to investigate yourself?
In many situations, yes, and I think that the number of arrests that are made of our employees might be a good indication of our ability to do that.
Or maybe someone would also argue the fact that you're investigating yourself. Maybe it's more. But I guess my other part of this question is, we hear a lot of things about transparency and accountability and putting systems in place to make the public feel comfortable how the department or law enforcement is interacting. And when the public comes forward and says, hey, we want the state patrol to step in instead of allowing you guys to investigate yourselves because of history of not necessarily doing the best job at it. Do you not understand why people, the distrust, the mistrust and all those things still exist because you guys always come and say, no, we can investigate ourselves?
So again, we enjoy a good collaborative working relationship with the state patrol. So in the instance of any staff misconduct, we would consult with them, and at any time, if they wish to take the case, they certainly have the opportunity to do that.
My question is, so do you value the relationship with the state patrol over the perception from the public and others that you guys aren't doing a great job?
In terms of investigations, we are not doing a great job.
Yes.
I guess I'm not aware that we're not doing a great job in terms of investigation, Senator McKinney.
Well, I understand you're the interim director and it probably didn't fall on your lap during that time Frakes was the director, but the public doesn't believe in the Department of Corrections. They feel like you guys run the institutions horribly and you guys don't do a great job of policing yourselves. And you said that the system is working effectively. Who is it working effectively for?
Well, again, I think from our perception, we pursue any criminal activity. And if the investigation indicates that there was criminal wrongdoing, we refer those to the appropriate county attorneys for review.
So who is it working effectively for?
I think it's working for everyone.
You sure?
I believe so, yes.
Has it been working effectively during your overcrowded staffing crisis?
So again, I'm speaking specifically to the investigations. I realize that there are other areas.
No, what I'm asking is, has the ability to investigate within the department been working effectively considering you guys have an overcrowded staffing crisis?
I believe that we are in the process of addressing both of those things effectively.
So it's not working effectively,
I believe it is.
but you try to wordsmith it, but you probably never gonna answer the yes or no, but thank you.
Other questions for this testifier? I don't see any. Thank you for being here. Next opponent. Is there anyone here in the neutral capacity? I don't see any. While Senator Wayne's coming up, I will say we've received one letter in support. Senator Wayne to close.
Thank you, and thank you all. I just want to remind everybody that our exec board has just sent a question to the Attorney General regarding inspectors. Depending on how that comes out, that alternative may or may not be there. But the reality is, at the end of the day, I think when you look at what's going on, we have to have somebody from the outside, even if it's the same branch of government, oversee criminal investigations. I think it's too hard to do criminal investigations yourself. That's just what I believe. So that's why it's here. I'll answer any questions. Probably sure there's none because people are ready to go home.
Any questions for Senator Wayne? Somehow no one wants to ask you a question now,
Got it.
Senator Wayne. That ends our hearing on 788 and we'll end the hearings for the day.